Hello, everyone, and welcome to the paper and the data. This is Module 5, where we talk about persistent identifiers, and we're specifically going to highlight the ORCID as a researcher identifier and how that connects to all of your other published work and other research products. I want to thank Aaron Robinson. These slides were originally presented at the Ocean Science 2020 conference in February, and Aaron was incredibly supportive and provided contributions to those slides. She's not with us on today's recording, but I just want to thank her for all of that effort. And today we do have Randy Townsend, who's AGU's Director of Publications Operations. Hello, Randy.
Hello, Shelley. How are you today?
I am super. Let's talk about persistent identifiers.
Let's do it.
So here's Module 5. Hopefully you've enjoyed the other 4 modules. And don't forget, there's also a resources module that will be, all of these modules will be on Zenodo, all the slides. And we'll provide that information in our social media so you can gain access. But you can also look on Zenodo under my name, Shelley Stahl, and you'll be able to find them. All right, let's get going. So this particular talk has been given a couple times, so if you happen to have seen the digital presence talk at Springer Nature's workshop for early career folks last in 2019, we also gave it at AGU's fall meeting. This is a shorter version, and huge thanks to Mark Parsons for approving my use of his ORCID page and all of its content. He may have updated it since. This was a screen capture from 2019. But if you're not familiar with ORCID, you should immediately get yourself your ORCID ID. I'm using Mark Parsons. My name is a little too unique, but Mark's name is, there are other Mark Parsons in the world, and it's really important to recognize the fact that you want to be uniquely identified. And Mark has a really fantastic, well-documented ORCID profile. And this is the public view, so you can take a look at that. And his ID is connected to all of his research products. You can also see his other researcher IDs in the bottom left there. He's got a Scopus author ID that's connected here into his ORCID profile, as well as a researcher ID. And what you should do is think of your ORCID as like a hub where you connect things together. Don't think of it as a CV where you provide to your funder or it's maintained by your institution, but you would want to connect your CV into your ORCID so everything is connected here and people can find you. They can get your current email address. Even if you change employment or your institution, you're able to be located no matter what. And this is especially important for early career folks. They do move from their bachelor's to their master's to their PhD work to their postdoc work, and sometimes you're moving countries too. And finding you later is really important in order to collaborate and connect, and this is how you can make sure that happens. So there's 2 things that are really important in order for your ORCID profile to be automatically updated with your publications and your new data sets and software. And there's a whole bunch of new terms that you probably have never heard before, but this is something I want you to share with all your friends because it's really, really important. And I give you a bit.ly to this page, this blog post that actually will help you do it. So what you may not know is that Crossref is the entity that all of the journals feed publications into, and they help to then push out to all of the aggregator sites. And one of the things that they also do is they have an arrangement with ORCID where they can auto update your ORCID profile with any new publication you have. You want this. You want them to do this because that means you don't have to, and it will happen the moment your paper is published. And so what you should do is follow that set of links having to do with auto updates, because ORCID is an opt-in tool. In other words, they won't give authority to anybody else to update your ORCID profile unless you say it's okay. and you just do it once, and all of, going forward, the rest of your life, your publications will automatically go into ORCID. This is fantastic. This saves time and it's far more accurate, and I highly recommend it. So follow those directions. And the other one that I highly recommend is DataCite. This will also give you all of your data sets and software citations in order to have that automatically update your ORCID profile. Now, the wonky thing is the way they do, the two of them do it is two different ways. Crossref uses an email that comes into your ORCID profile, and DataCite uses a token, but you'll figure it out. Just get yourself to this site and do these things, and it will be fantastic. Now, Publons is another useful one. Publons has to do with open peer review, and you can also hook that into your ORCID profile as well.
And Shelley,
yeah.
I just want to give a quick example that we have at AGU. We hear from time to time authors that after they've completed a lot of their process in the submission, they come to us and say they want us to update their ORCID to their account. We cannot do it. We can give them a link to ORCID so that they can do it, but like you said, it's really self-driven. You have to do it yourself. It's on the author or the user to actually do themselves.
Yeah, that's right. And this is exactly how it happens automatically. And I think I used to call this like the biggest secret, because there was a point in time where ORCID was really pushing this auto connection for you to enable it, but it's not really out there right now. And all these authors have no idea that this little thing they can do, and by the way, this web page is super hard to find. And I was looking for it, and I knew what I was looking for, and I'm telling you, it was hard to find. So I made the bit.ly. Please use it, and you'll get right to it, and you can find it. So, yeah, isn't that crazy? Alrighty, so let's talk about what it means to use your ORCID and connect to your other research products. So the ORCID is all about you. It's you uniquely. And because our membership is worldwide, I want to talk a little bit about some of the odd practices that are out there. We've got some communities where they share an ORCID, and you just can't do that. This is really one-to-one. Your ORCID for you needs to be unique to you. So please make sure that you have your own and that it has all of your work. And make sure you have one. No matter how unique your name is, if it's a Shelley Stahl or a Mark Parsons or Randy Towson, it does not matter. Make sure that you are using your persistent identifier. The other thing I tend to say is put it on everything. Even if right now your ORCID, there's not a place in all of the tools that are out there for you to put your ORCID in. It's a unique format. And it can be mined later and populated later. So find a notes section and just pop your ORCID in there. And later, those tools that start to evolve and actually include ORCIDs as a primary identifier will have an opportunity to find your ORCID within the text for any product you've submitted. And it's so important that when you write your mother, you should put it at the bottom of your page and make sure she knows what your ORCID is. And I hope you're all laughing because that's how important your ORCID should be. So it connects to your publications. And as we talked about with Crossref, your ORCID can be populated with your publication. And there's automatic ways of doing that. And when you enable those, you too will have all of this as well. Now, Randy, can you talk about AGU and when ORCIDs are required and what, even though we have some, we don't require, well, I'll let you tell it. You tell the story.
So AGU were early adapters of ORCID because we saw the value in it. So right now we require ORCIDs for all corresponding authors. In order to complete your submission, you have to have an ORCID, but we strongly encourage all authors, peer reviewers as well, anybody actually engaged in our activities to register for an ORCID. there's so many benefits to it. We have authors that move institutions, in the example that you mentioned, and they want to update their affiliations because they're no longer in New York, they're in China or wherever they may have moved to, and they want to update their affiliations. And if it's tied to an ORCID, it doesn't matter where you go because it's linked to you, not to an affiliation or institution. So we're really encouraging everybody that's involved in the process to register for an ORCID.
Great. And that corresponding author then needs to include those ORCIDs for all those co-authors.
Absolutely.
Yep. So please take the time to do that. It may seem very tedious, but you are enabling all of these connections to be made, and you want your co-authors to get the same credit that you're getting. All right. So the very first time I did this presentation, I was fortunate enough a couple days before to actually have had a publication. And I hope you find this humorous because it was not an AGU journal, and we can all kind of giggle about it. But it was a journal that talked about the FAIR guidelines, which have to do with making sure our data is findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. In this case, I've been working with the folks within the chemistry community, IUPAC specifically, with Leah McEwen and Ian Bruno. And you can also see Leslie Wyborn there, who is part of the geosciences, and Nancy Hobel-Heinrich, who is leading the data management training clearinghouse. And we got ourselves published, so yay. And what I want to highlight for you, and I swear I put the ORCIDs in for all of my co-authors. I don't know why just myself and Leah are highlighted. I think because we were both the corresponding authors, but you can see that our ORCIDs are identified with a little green dot. And you can also see the Crossref DOI for the publication there. And what happened is once this went published, my ORCID automatically updated. So let me show you a little bit about how that worked. Here's a clip from my ORCID profile, and that same paper is there at the top. And you can see the source for the submission being Crossref, which is the folks that work with all of the journals in order to automatically update your ORCID profile. So right there, and another paper that was published separately, or a book chapter that was published separately, is below. Now, interestingly, I actually had not enabled my the automatic update from Crossref when the paper that's in Nature was published, the Make Scientific Data Fair, but you can see that I did the update myself. Then I added the auto connection to Crossref, and I can assure you Crossref actually improved my entry. I did not type in all that ISSN information. I did not bother to do that, but Crossref helped and made the entry on my ORCID far more rich and useful. So if you're wondering if you should do this, please, as you're listening to this webinar, do it right now. It's super easy, and it's only has to be done once. And I highly recommend it. So now that you've got your publications connected to your ORCID, you have enabled the automatic update from Crossref. Let's keep going. That ORCID profile of yours is where everything that you have should be connected in. And right now, the publishers make sure that your funder information is captured for your publication, and there is an update to your funder with that information using tools like Chorus that are connected into Crossref as well. So that already happens. You may or may not have realized that. Your affiliation is identified, and you need to take control and make sure that your data also has your ORCID and your software also has your ORCID and any of your other research products. So how do I optimize this? How do I make sure that I'm getting the most out of these digital connections? So, and what's the benefit to me? Well, when you're able to optimize it, then the discovery of your research products is a lot easier for anyone who's trying to collaborate with you or trying to understand your research or potentially wants to reuse your data or your software, which is desirable. We do want folks to work with us and continue to take concepts in different directions, especially over time as new science is evolving. And we want to get credit for that, so this is how the credit happens. So in order to optimize linking and discovery, every single one of your research objects needs to have your ORCID, has to be in a repository that supports preservation and handles those persistent identifiers, registers those DOIs, connects them to your ORCID, and provides the ability for discovery and harvesting, as it says there. The links between, like for instance, you can have your ORCID with your data set, but you can also connect the publication associated with your data in your data metadata. So that's really exciting and creates those related research object links. Also, when you want to try to optimize understanding of each of your research objects, this is really done through robust metadata or good documentation for each of your research objects. And it's the community that you work in that really guides what that looks like. They also guide the best vocabulary to use. And what I mean by that, and here's an example, let's say your data happens to be in a CSV file or an Excel spreadsheet, and you're typing willy-nilly some sort of header that you've used always, but you've never connected to your community to see if they've actually got a standard for those headers to describe the data that's below. You really want to tune into your community and use something that's standard, so that when integration takes place or uploading to a domain repository, you're not changing those headers and making them different. Instead, you're trying to actually just align to what the rest of the folks in your community are using for interoperability later, for understanding your data or software later. And then this all enables and fuels reuse and credit back to you for your contribution of that research product to the scientific record. So make sure that your usage license is as open as possible. CC0 is best of all, and with folks giving you attribution, and you provide what that recommended citation is. And then don't forget, make sure you go onto that website with the bit.ly provided to enable the trust relationship from ORCID to the Crossref system and to DataCite, so they can automatically update your ORCID profile. So one of the things, I like to use AGU as an example as to why you want to keep your ORCID profile really up to date. One of the examples here is, for instance, we have a lot of committees, and when we're trying to find someone with a particular background, maybe someone in Europe or Australia or an Asian country to represent one of our committees, we use tools like ORCID to identify you. So you would have an AGU affiliation, and we would have information that we could take a look at to find if you might be interested in joining one of those committees. So if you do community support, for instance, Thriving Earth Exchange might be really interested if you could help with a project that's happening in Nepal, for instance, which would be kind of exciting. Or if you help with standards development and we're doing something or promoting something within the work at AGU around data or software, we might be interested in a working group relationship with you. And so it's really important that you provide all that information on your ORCID profile. Randy, I see preprint server here. I'm wondering if you can share information about our eStore preprint server.
Sure. So our ESOR, AGU, not just AGU, but we have Earth and Space Science open archive called a preprint server called ESOR, and it requires ORCIDs for all contributors so that anything that is deposited in that preprint can be recognized and people get credit for their contributions. ESOR takes the preprints of manuscript submissions. It takes poster presentations, abstracts. We're expanding. I think we just had a release of more expansive products that can be deposited in ESOR. But ORCID is very, very much a part of ESOR. And it's all the value that we've explained throughout this presentation in terms of persistent identifiers is really recognized through ESOR.
Yeah, I use it for all of my posters. So anything I put in at fall meeting or ocean science, or, I've put all my posters there. So that's helpful. And you get a citation, you get an UI. It's great.
Absolutely.
It's great. So great, thanks. So let me share with you as these connections continue to develop between ORCID and all of your research products. There are folks that are working on infographics or PID graphs to help you actually discover other people, other content, other products out there to benefit you and your work and your collaborations. One of the groups is funded out of the European Commission called FREA, and they've been working on a PID graph, and it's continuing to develop. Martin Fenner, who's one of the members of FREA, provided us with a presentation during a meeting that we were having at the Research Data Alliance last year in October. So these are slides that he has said we could reuse. And what that looks like, this is a meta-analysis, just so you realize, and you're welcome to download that Jupyter notebook and create it yourself. The meta-analysis, so let me back up a slide. Take a look at the bottom. You see Crossref down there, you see DataCite down there, you also see ORCID down there, and they've provided content to their holdings in order to generate these PID graphs. So if you look in the very middle there, publications, 5.5 million, that would have come from Crossref. And Crossref maintains the links to the funder profiles, which are provided by the journals. So 21,000 funders out there, crazy big, right? And those are private and government funders worldwide. And organizations is another one of the elements that is tracked. You can see the software source code. That's not really there's not a lot of uptake yet for getting preservation of software, so that number's kind of low, 108,000. I expect that will grow significantly over these next couple years. And you can see the data sets, over 6 million. Those numbers coming out of DataCite are primarily being reported by repositories. The journals are catching up, and they're going to help increase those connections between publications and data sets. But the one I really want you to focus on is, do you see the person in the bottom left side? There's not even 100,000 people identified. That's your ORCID. And this is crazy low. Like, within the Earth and Space Sciences, there's at least 300,000 of us. So we really need to do a better job connecting our ORCIDs with all of our content. And I challenge you all to do that. I challenge you to make sure you have an ORCID, that your profile is completely up to date, it connects to all of your other research products, and you maintain it. Set yourself a schedule in your calendar, in your diary, every 3 months to make sure it has all of your content in it, because it's really important. You know, we gave examples as to why AGU cares, but anyone in the scientific space cares about having the most accurate information about our scientists, so that we can benefit from each other in ways that this particular profile will allow us to do now. We'll be able to find people, like, for instance, if I'm looking for someone I need to collaborate with or want to in one of the countries within Africa. I don't have a lot of contacts there. I have some in Botswana and I have some in South Africa, but maybe I'm trying to find somebody in Kenya to help with artificial intelligence effort. I happen to be on a grant for that right now, looking at protected areas. And we really want to try to find somebody local in Kenya. Well, you could do that here. You could actually hunt for someone who's published within along the lines of protected areas that happens to be located in Kenya, and you could query this metagraph in that way, and that would really help you connect with others. So here is Martin Fenner's graph. On the right-hand side there, he used it as an example. Martin generates data sets. He also writes software. So the orange dot there on the sort of towards the right-hand side that has a whole bunch of blue dots connected, that's a data set that was particularly popular, and a whole bunch of publications were written about that data set. And then on the left side there is the green dot that represents Martin himself and his ORCID, and you can see he's connected to additional data sets and software as well. So you could do this for yourself. You could take that Jupyter notebook there and actually run a PID graph for yourself and see how you're connected, and then explore it and see different ways that you could actually benefit from having a tool like this. Or you could see how badly you're connected and hurry up and get all your ORCIDs out there into your research products. I hope that you're motivated to do that. So hopefully this is helping you understand the benefits of getting all of these connections. So that ends this module. Thank you everyone for participating. Randy, thank you so much for being with me throughout all of these modules. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me, Shelley. It's been fantastic.
Great. Take care now, everybody.
Bye.